cross. 秋の海を見つめて思い出すあの夏の
Hello and welcome. My name is BeBopAnime Arteron, and welcome to my review of Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? So this is an anime that was released in 2015 and essentially was by JC Staff and published by Sentai Filmworks. With this said, let's begin with the overall presentation. The presentation of the anime itself takes place in a fictional country called Orario, and its main feature being the place of the dungeons and pretty much all sorts of monsters, dragons, and goblins. Pretty much all adventurers that go to this land visit the dungeon, defeat monsters, and take these crystal shards to craft magic items amongst other treasures, as well as exchange it for world currency. So, with this said, a couple thousand years ago, the gods from above, wherever the divine, came down and decided to start familiars, basically guilds. With this said, they decided to help and train and rank up these adventurers that were pushing throughout the dungeon and pretty much taking on the dungeon and its many adventures. From there, we have our main protagonist, Bell Cranel, a beginning adventure with a bunch of ambition that gets brought into a familiar that was not relatively known or popular, Hestia's familiar. From there, Hestia helps him and supports him, and pretty much he goes on an everyday adventures going through the overall spiel of going in a dungeon. From there, he meets his dream girl, Izia Wallenstein, and immediately falls in love and ends up trying to get with her, relatively tries to measure up to her, to get to her level, as he sees her as a very strong individual. From there, he trains and gathers and grows strength throughout the whole anime, and overall, you get to see him grow and meet other characters, interact with them as such. The characters themselves, Bell Cranel being the main one, is a likable character. We see him grow not only in strength, but also in development. Not the biggest development, I will say, and as a protagonist of this type of genre, not the most memorable one. I did feel, though, for the most part, throughout this anime, I was enjoying him grow from just this beginning adventure with ambitions to an adventure that has not only the strength to back up his ambitions and his overall kind of wittiness. You get to see him just grow and just understand and try to be as kind and caring as any other protagonist would be, and it's awesome. Moving on from there, we have his familiar, or Hestia, the goddess. Mixed bag, pretty much as a support to Bell. It's good, she does help him throughout his adventure. From there, though, as a likable character, debatable. And comes off more or less as an annoyance throughout the whole anime itself, and just overall interrupts the kind of flow almost in a way where, dare I say, fan service gets in the way right here at this very moment. Then from there, we have the two other party members that get joined later on, Lily and Welf. They just feel like they're there to be there. I honestly think that. I mean, Lily has a bit more prevalence because her arc actually gets explained, her story gets actually explained, and she gets a bit more backstory than Welf does. Welf being a bit more mysterious because him having some kind of connections to some other familiars and his familiar, and making probably one of the best blacksmith type of weapons, and him overall not, offering his services and whatnot. And it's kind of a mysterious type of thing that will be hopefully later on explained. From there, though, we have the main heroine, Izia Wallenstein, a very strong individual, but just plain. There's no emotions. I mean, there's really just no emotions. Besides just being an overall airhead, there's no emotions there, really, to be honest. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that the chemistry between Bell and Izia, besides the one common thing, them being, wanting to grow in strength and become the best that they can be, that's like the only prevalent thing that I can say both protagonist and the heroine can have. Other than that, I just did not feel like they would match very well. Regardless of that, though, hopefully Izia Wallenstein in the second season will get a bit more backstory. So the animation from JC Staff is pretty detailed for the most part. The world itself and the backgrounds, of course, are pretty well done. I think that's the design from the characters to the monsters are pretty generically fantasy in a good way, obviously, but also it just felt that there was nothing to be spectacular, nothing memorable. It was a passable job that was done very well for the most part, and just overall, it's passable, solid. Soundtrack and voice. So, the opening, Hey World, is a pretty decent opening. Nothing too special, I think, for the most part. It fit the show itself, so I felt that it was decent. From there, you have the ending itself, Right Light Rise by Kennen Wakamashi. Now, it's a pretty fucking catchy song, and I really did enjoy it. It was pretty well done. I think that a lot of people can agree with me on that, other than the opening. Very generic, in my opinion. Now, the OST, the original soundtrack, I felt that at moments, like every other fantasy soundtrack, they have their moments where it's like, holy shit, the music is ramping up. Everything is feeling awesome at this very moment, because it's these momentary moments where you feel that the characters, everything comes together. But every other moment, from the touching moments to the overall interest from characters to the dialogue to the background music, it just felt generic, really, to be honest. Not to say that the voice acting on the Japanese side was very bad. I think Yoshika Makasuko did pretty well for Bell Cranel, and even Hestia, Inrai, Matsunia did pretty well for the most part. Also, it just overall felt generic fantasy dialogue and fantasy passable things. There was really nothing too special about the soundtrack from the voice too. And as of this moment, until March of 2017 of this year, there will be no English voice acting until I think it's the first season will be actually finally released. Moving on from there, though, the verdict. I really want to say that, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? Has a good story, good presentation, very good for the most part. The animation is solid. It pulls through the anime, and at its moments has those awesome action sequences that are passable. The characters, Belle being the best character of all of them, and the others being very Then from there we have the soundtrack and voice. The voice acting is very well done for the most part. The soundtrack is very generic fantasy, and the ending thing being my favorite probably of the kind of whole soundtrack itself. Overall, though, would I recommend this anime? I recommend it to anyone that enjoys a bit of a generic fantasy story with the protagonist to get behind and watch him grow. Other than that, you probably want to skip this anime if you're not into fantasy type of animes. But if you are, good for you, because this one's actually a decent one that I recommend watch. And as I know, I think it's in April of 2017 of this year, there will be a second season release, which will focus on Isa Wallenstein. So that is awesome. We'll get a little bit more fleshed out and chemistry with her in the future. So with that said, if you guys are interested in any other anime recommendation, Konosuba and ReZero are my two other fantasy animes that are, if you watch this one, you're probably going to watch those ones. Konosuba being the more lighthearted, funny one, and ReZero being a bit more of a serious and kind of very plot twisty and plot heavy type of anime that if you enjoy, you probably will. So with that said, my name is BeBopAnime or Tyrant, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.